Welcome to the third stop in our flight attendant display case. My name is Janet. Back in 1973, I worked in an office building that had no windows. I knew there was something better, so I became a TWA flight attendant. Airplanes became my office, and there were windows everywhere, showing me the world. Today, I volunteer at the museum and enjoy meeting our visitors. For now, I'm going to share the story of TWA's flight attendants in the 1960s. Just by taking a quick look at this section of the case, you can see how things changed quickly in just a short 10-year period. I'll fill you in on the highlights, but first, let's start at the beginning, 1960. That sound ushered in this era for TWA. Actually, TWA took delivery of its first Boeing 707 jetliner in 1959. That's a model of one in the lower center of the case. To associate their flight attendants with this new age in aviation, TWA called upon California fashion designer Don Loper to create new hostess uniforms. Mr. Loper, a well-known Hollywood dress designer, created the uniform you see on the left. Introduced in 1960, you're looking at the summer version. The winter version was dark brown and can be seen in the two photographs directly above the uniform's shoulders. During the time this uniform was worn, a lot was happening at TWA and around the world. In 1962, TWA opened its iconic Flight Center terminal at New York's Idlewild International Airport. Today, that beautiful building still stands at what is now Kennedy International Airport and has been brought back to life as the TWA Hotel. Back at TWA, jet aircraft were beginning to dominate the fleet, and in 1964, TWA even expressed interest in obtaining supersonic jet aircraft. And in 1965, TWA introduced a new uniform. It's the next one on the right. Pierre Balmain of France was called upon by TWA to create this uniform, becoming the first international fashion designer engaged by a U.S. airline. The turquoise colors match the interior of TWA's jet aircraft, and I think you'll agree, the uniform clearly conveys the excitement of that new era of jet travel. You're looking at the summer uniform. The winter version was a solid turquoise in color and can be seen with this unique pillbox hat in the illustration just above the left shoulder. Before we move on to our next uniform, let's talk for a minute about a subject of interest to everyone, dining. In 1961, TWA introduced this very popular Royal Ambassador First Class service. The menus and service provided by well-trained TWA hostesses were carefully designed to give the experience of eating in the finest international restaurant. That's a Royal Ambassador table setting right in front of you. Entrees such as Chateaubriand sliced at your seat on the carving board to the right were available along with an array of appetizers and desserts. It was all served on china made by Rosenthal of Germany. And yes, those were complimentary cigarettes. Smoking was quite common on airplanes during this era. Specific non-smoking sections would eventually be introduced on TWA airplanes, but not until 1970. Finally, in 1988, the federal government introduced the first of several restrictions that would eventually eliminate smoking on all commercial airline flights. We'll end the 1960s with a look at that yellow uniform to the right. Introduced in 1968, it ushered in a brighter and more casual look, a sign of the times. It also, for the first time, allowed TWA hostesses to make a personal decision about their appearance. Up to this point, every TWA hostess appeared, well, the same. There were no variations in the look of the uniforms they wore. That changed when Dalton of America designed this new uniform. You're looking at the winter uniform, and yellow was one of 3 colors hostesses could choose to wear at their discretion. All 3 colors are seen in that picture at the bottom of the uniform. The handbag and colorful hat were accessories to the uniform. There's no doubt the first decade of TWA's jet age ended on a very bright note. Well, so much for the 1960s. There is obviously much more to see in this section of our case, so if you'd like to hang around a bit longer in the 60s, you can pause your listening device and look at the items in more detail. Otherwise, it's time to move on to the 1970s, where the changes just kept on coming. For now, I'd like to thank you for joining me in this section of our flight attendant display case.